Hello everybody, welcome to number 27. Now there was a time when older BMWs were considered amongst the finest cars ever made, but was that reputation deserved or was it just hype? Well, today I'm in the perfect position to find out, because what I have here is a 31-year-old, one owner, 500,000 mile E34 525i. Thank you to Bidding Classics for sponsoring today's video. Check out this online auction for classic cars with no buyer's fees. We're going to see how it looks, how it's worn, the exterior, the interior. We're going to see how many bits have been changed over time, how much it has cost to keep this on the road for 31 years, take it for a drive and then see if it's really true that this is the ultimate driving machine or if it is just overblown hype. Now, just a quick aside about that number plate. I know what it looks like, but those are the initials of the owner's name. He's called David, and he is a really tall chap. So his family, his wife and children, gave him that number plate as a present for his birthday. Now, you might all be thinking that this test is a foregone conclusion, because after all, this car has 500,000 miles. So therefore, it has to be a good car, right? Absolutely not. I had some friends when I was a teenager, and his parents had an Austin Maxi, or was it an Allegro? One of those two. Anyway, that car at that point in time, and I think it went on to get more, had 325,000 miles. And that was not a good car. They liked it and they just kept fixing it and just kept it going, and it was a pretty sorry state in any case. With this, I feel it might be different, but first of all, let's talk a little bit about the general condition, and I think you'll agree, from the outside, it does look really rather good. There's only one small sign of bubbling on the the passenger side rear arch. The wheels are non-standard, they're Hartke wheels. I'll explain why he's got those in a moment, but I prefer the look of the original sort of lattice BBSs, but I think they suit the car quite well as well. When it comes to the interior, I think it's absolutely stunning to consider what the full mileage is, because it just doesn't show it. There's a little bit of wear on this bolster, and I do think he has replaced that before, but really still, these sports seats with the cloth, they're really not bad, all things considered. The dash looks like it could be from a car with half the mileage. You really wouldn't, no, not half the mileage, with a fifth of a mileage. If I was told this is a 90,000 mile car, when I got in it and had a look around, I would totally believe it. So these were perhaps the first executive class saloons that came out, and they almost set a whole new standard and a whole new class. They had McPherson struts at the front, semi-trailing arm setup at the rear, which was fairly standard. I mean, all independent, which is good. Disc brakes all round, of course. They had a massive variety of engines, and one of the sweetest is this one, the 525i. With 500,000 miles on it, how does it run today? Now, I don't want to thrash this car because I am conscious it is high mileage, but David, the owner, has literally just come back from the ring where he got the 500th mile. So he does drive it, and he told me, don't worry about it, rev it to 6,000. So let's just go into second gear here, and then once this chap has pulled out, 3,500 revs, let me put my foot down. And just to the red line, which is just over 6. It's still incredibly creamy, it's smooth. To me, it feels in peak health. Now the Tourings were a little bit heavier than the saloons, so as a result, the 0 to 60 time is supposed to be about 8 seconds. We'll do one more pull on the way back, but the way the engine's going at the moment, I am just astounded that it has never had any major work, because it goes, it pulls as if it was a pretty fresh engine. Unbelievable. It turns in nicely. The recirculating ball steering rack was never one of the best elements of the E34. BMWs historically don't have the best steering feel from their systems. I know he has done some work to the steering rack. but this feels really good. There's a little bit of a technical bit here. See if the handling is as good as people say that it is. And that is extremely tidy. Really nice and neat, crisp. The suspension is, although aftermarket, it is standard spec settings, Bilstein dampers, and I think M Sport springs. And it's a really nice compromise. It goes very, very well. Okay, time for our pull through the gears. Has this survived with all its power? It can't have. I don't think it's going to be very far off. To me, it feels like it hasn't lost any power at all. 190 horsepower, which is this used to put out when it was new, it definitely isn't far off that. Incredible. In truth, the engine does smoke a little bit on overrun, but all in all, it's passed its MOT, and I think that is still pretty good for a 500,000 mile engine. Really nicely balanced chassis. As I was doing those S's there, it just turned in quite sharply, no understeer, a little bit of rotation from the tail, but very, very slight, coming out of the really tricky off-camber left-hander there. Rides extremely well. All the switchgear just still feels absolutely lovely. You can see why these were so ahead of the game when they came out. The interior with its driver-facing instrumentation still doesn't look all that dated. The instruments are really clear. All the switches still feel quality. The way they move, there's still no slack in them after all this time. It's hard to believe that it has survived so well. Everything seems to be working, and it's still a very nice place to sit in. So it really is impressive, but is this a case of the expression in the UK which we use, which is triggers broom? Now, what does that mean? Well, there was a very famous sitcom here in which a road sweeper told his friends that he'd used the same broom for 22 years and then added, of course, I've replaced 14 of the brushes and 17 of the handles. So, is this the same thing? Is it only so good now because almost everything has been replaced on it? Or is it so good just because BMW made them so well? Let's find out. So how many parts has it been through and how much has it cost to run this car in 31 years? Well, first of all, let me just talk a little bit about consumables, but they're not hugely relevant. 3 clutches in that time, and obviously the brakes have been redone several times in terms of discs, pads, some of the lines as well, but you'd expect all that. What is absolutely stunning and incredible is that this 500,000 mile car is still on its original engine, and that engine has not been touched in terms of the head is still the original head. It hasn't been rebuilt. It's still on the original timing chain and tensioner. It's still on the original gearbox, and all that's been done to the gearbox is basically 2 oil changes in all this time. The rear diff is original. What has then been replaced? 1 wheel bearing, 2 coils, a new heater motor, power steering pump, the hydraulic rams for the bonnet and tailgate, and both the bonnet and tailgate have also been replaced, I think due to rust. The instrument panel failed, and that was fixed just by replacing a couple of capacitors. Bodywork wise, the sills have been patched up a little bit. All 4 corners have had a little bit of attention, and that corner there is starting to bubble up a little bit on the wheel arches. And in 2004, it had a visit to Birds where they replaced the wheels with the Hartgau items that you see now, the suspension with Bilsteins, but road spec. And I think some Hartgau springs or some other kind of sports springs. They also put on the M-Tech body kit and did some body work. So what was the total cost over all this time to maintain this car in the state it is in now? Dave has been keeping a tally. It is £30,000. In isolation, that doesn't sound too bad, but when you realise that the bill from Birds in 2004 itself was 18,000, and there were elements of things that didn't really need doing, like the M-Tech suspension, the wheels, not the M-Tech suspension, the M-Tech body kit, the wheels, other bits and bobs, it could have probably been reduced further. So is there any question that this is the ultimate driving machine? I think not. It is incredible how this car looks and drives considering its age. Thank you all so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Please do subscribe if you haven't. If you have a car that you'd like me to review, then please get in touch by email or on Instagram. See you soon.